In this session, again, what are we exploring? Developing future-ready leaders. And of course, some of you may be those leaders and you're looking at the future. And some of us may be talent or HR professionals who had this question, in their mind. And of course, I'm just going to set a brief context before introducing you to our panel. In the meantime, you can see who is part of the panel on the screen, but I'm going to do a quick introduction as well in a moment. But just before we look at that, of course, there's been a lot of interest recently. In fact, we were just going through this data, a lot of webinars, conversations, you could say, on the future of work. And is that changing? What is changing? How is it changing? What are the implications for us, right? And there's also been conversations on the future of leaders. Is there something that changes about leadership? Is leadership this constant that we possess, that is different in different situations, but maybe something we've been discussing and had words and terms to describe till now? So that's what we're going to explore together. And we've got some very, very nice points of view, beautiful, diverse perspectives that we're going to get. And so let me now introduce our panel. I'll start with Ms. Vidhu Arora. She is from, she's the Director, Talent Management at Gap. And of course, we've been working closely with Vidhu, and one of the things I can tell you about her, intense passion, pushes to produce some fantastic results. Let me just bring up a quick screen to help us over here as well. And she's really exceptional in her job. She's got a great track record, a lot of awards, been recognized for various designs that she's been able to do. And you can see it's strategic at an OD level, but then also to recognize organizations across, and this is, across multiple regions, across Europe, Asia, etc. And so really, really excited, Vidhu, to have you with us, to be able to pick your brain a little bit, to get that perspective, that global perspective that you have, but also, the perspective of someone who is very, very change focused, also in an industry that is, in the midst of a lot of change. So thank you so much, Vidhu, but welcome to this panel.
Thank you, Craig, and hello, everybody. Looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So there's one point of view, very powerful one. We also have Ravi Hemnani, who is with us. Ravi heads learning and development for Siemens in India. Of course, we've been working with Ravi for many years now. I personally know Ravi for many years. And what's always intrigued me about him or impressed me is his never-ending thirst for knowledge. Ravi also works, as part of Siemens. Siemens has gone through some remarkable and dramatic change of going from what would have been considered an old world kind of company to jump into the future, jump on digital. In fact, their CEO used to head their digital business. And Ravi, of course, has helped the organization successfully through that time and into the future as we continue to change and look ahead. So again, wonderful having you with us, Ravi, and all of that experience you bring. We look forward to being able to, of course, get some insights from you as well.
Thanks for inviting Craig and Sumit. Looking forward for it.
Excellent. And then, of course, we have Sumit, who is the CEO of InspireOne, a consultant right now. Sumit used to be with Harvard. He led, I think for about 7 years, he led their business in the south of Asia. And Sumit returned to InspireOne as the CEO and partner. He works closely with senior leadership across multiple industries. And so he is also seeing firsthand what the challenges are as we move at such an incredible pace today. And again, wonderful to have you with us, Sumit. Welcome. And we look forward to sharing and listening to your point of view as well.
Thank you so much, Craig, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's session. Also, my thanks to Vidhu and Ravi for joining this particular session. It's an honor to be with you in this conversation today.
Excellent. So that's our wonderful panel. Thank you, everyone. Once again, welcome, everyone. Great to have you with us. So let's start off with perhaps simple, but question that may be on some of our mind, and we'll throw this open to everyone in the panel. And this first question is, we're here, we're talking about future-ready leadership, and the implication is leadership changes. So the question is, does leadership really change, or are these just new words that we've put together? Is it more a marketing gimmick? Perhaps we'll start with Vidhu.
One simple sentence, I would say, yes, definitely. The expectations from leaders is shifting, and it's shifting quite rapidly, I would say, right? And there are multiple reasons of why that's happening, but I'll reserve that for the later part of the conversation. Let's give others a chance.
Sure. Thank you, Vidhu. So firm, confident, it absolutely is. So let's not ignore it. Ravi, what's your view on that question, please?
I echo with what Vidhu said. And if we really look at it, everything around us, and ask ourselves this question in the last at least 3-4 years, and especially in the last 1 or 2 years with this pandemic hitting us, have we changed? Answer is a yes. Has the environment around us changed? Answer is a yes. Has the competition changed? Again, answer is a yes. Yeah. Has the expectations of employees in the company changed, and in your family also, by the way? Yeah. Answer is a yes. What is happening to the work condition? Has it changed? Answer is a yes. We're working from home. And how we interact with people, has it changed? I mean, look at these conferences itself. In the world before, we could have possibly had an in-person conversation like this, but now we're doing everything virtual. So everything is changed. And there is no reason why leadership should not change. It's the need for the hour.
Great. Well, thank you, Ravi. Just a reminder, Ravi, I'm the one asking the questions. But thank you for helping us reflect.
I answered it along with that, yeah. So I'm just trying to bring perspective to see if everything around us is changing, leadership also needs to change. And that's given.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Sumit, would you like to also jump in on that introductory warm-up question?
Absolutely. No, I agree with Vidhu and Ravi's choice completely. I think to sum it up, what we are all trying to say is that does leadership have to change? Absolutely, it has to. But I think the main question is, will it change fast enough? Because the leadership had to change even before COVID. I think COVID has accelerated the urgency towards making that change happen. But as hopefully the impact of the pandemic declines, I think one of the critical messages to remember is that leaders will still need to have to continue to change. And I think the main issue will be around how fast, how can we accelerate that process of personal and leadership transformation.
Excellent.
Absolutely love that, Sumit, what you brought up. And I just wanted to add something over there, a different perspective. Leadership expectations vary with every situation, with every team, with every individual you're trying to kind of lead and mobilize, right? And it's always been changing and will continue to change. The whole fundamental question right now is when we're trying to generalize and say, what does the quorum feel? What does the overall consensus look like? I think the urgency of that change is so important factor over here, because of whatever is going around us and with us. I think the speed of change has accelerated at another level altogether. So that was why I was so permitted to say, I mean, there's no reason for me to believe that it's marketing. It is changing. It is changing very rapidly, in fact.
Yeah, excellent. And a wonderful perspective, on the speed of change. Thank you for bringing that. So even when we're looking at development, right, there is an implication now when we think of things, coming in that way. And thank you. I can see some comments coming in as well. And thank you very much, everyone, for typing in those comments. Our panelists will include some of your comments And of course, there are questions as well that we'll collate. We'll pause at a couple of times to reflect on some of your questions as well. Great. So let's move on now that we're all nice and warmed up. We've already had a great conversation, even though it's just the start. So perhaps I'll direct this to Vidhu and Ravi. The question is, what do you feel, and from your experience, what are the changes, perhaps the top 2 changes that you are seeing? You alluded to that things are changing. What would you say if because there's so much happening, if you were to just distill it down to perhaps the top 2 that you are seeing, the changes, and as a result, what are the challenges, perhaps top 2 challenges that leaders have to deal with as we move ahead?
I could take that up.
Please.
There's lots changing, like we talked about, but if you were to pinpoint on 2, and in my opinion, those 2 would be, I think with all that's happening in my socioeconomic landscape, in our physical space around us, the environment that we're living in, the first fundamental thing that I feel is becoming as a big change is the whole business transformation. No matter which organization we're talking about today, like I've spoken to so many leaders and so many employees in the last few years, I would say every organization today is going through a transformation journey. Now, to transformation to be what could be varied by different organizations and individuals, but organizations by and large are going through transformation. And to me, that's a very big shift, right? And it brings in very different expectations and changes for leaders from being change leadership has been on our leadership radar for almost many years, but it's agility which is taking a whole new meaning now, right? The way we show up, the way we drive things, the whole concept of adapting and iterating when your goalpost itself is shifting. And to me, that's been the biggest change in my conversations. We're going through as we speak right now, like as an organization, we're doing a lot of HR strategy conversations for our next year planning. And this is one of the big things we've been reflecting on, to say for every leader, no matter which level, agility is taking a very different meaning. And we're all very hardwired to develop products, services, solutions towards an outcome or that goal. With the changing and shifting goalpost, the whole process and the journey of iterations, adaptations is something that we all need to learn and build. So to me, that's one big shift I would talk about: change, the challenge, and as well as the change that it brings along. I'm just trying to narrow down on what's my second biggest. I would say, I think it's the whole concept of, for every human being today, the lowest levels of needs are being challenged, right? So many individuals, and most of the individuals today, are grappling with basics: safety, security, health, employment for many of us, right? Those things which were once given are no more given. Individuals, like Ravi mentioned, when you're working from home, we're playing dual roles, like this caregiving responsibility, there's jobs, there's expectations at home, at work. With a lot of that shifting, I think one of the biggest shifts I have seen in leaders is the whole ability to have empathy. Like, I'm just using the word empathy, but there's a lot more that comes under that, right? How do you, it's the employees are coming first now. The human aspect of the whole relationship is becoming so more evident. The whole conversation designs have shifted, the whole existence has shifted, our meet and greets have shifted. And a lot of that is bringing this whole change of leading with empathy, creating trust in trusted relationships within the teams, etc. So to me, if I were to position and point out 2 big things, to me, these would be these 2. Like, it would be these 2 basically.
Excellent, excellent. What wonderful perspectives. And I'm sure we all remember the time Six Sigma was the in thing, right? The statistical analysis of everything, even working with people, and this huge change now, and it's pushed even more to empathy. Thank you so much for that, Ravi.
I would say that I echo almost to what Vidhu said. I'm just going to only add to what she said. My perspective is that there are a lot of organizations which will eventually go back to how they were operating in the past. So they're not going to change. They're going to still start working 5 days from office. The expectations from employees would remain the same. But there are some organizations who will transform, and we are one among them. For example, we have already taken a decision that we're no longer going back to 5 days of work. We are going back to 2 to 3 days in office and 2 to 3 days at home. And we are realigning our strategies, our policies, our practices, our infrastructure around that. What it means is that we, from as a company, need to think very differently. The leadership requirements are very different, right? So from the organization standpoint, some organizations may not change as much. They will go back, and some organizations will drastically change. Some will be a mix of it. So one thing that for me is change is, this is how I look at it. The second thing that I look at it is from people angle, that is the employee angle. While what Vidhu said, I completely echo in terms of, employees are being challenged for basics. But then there is another side to the story. The another side to the story is the employees have been staying at home for almost now what, 15, 16 months? And we have not been able to meet them in person, greet them in person. The emotional connect that we had with them is slowly loosening. The loyalty that they may have developed while staying at office, coming and meeting people in person, that may not have developed, especially for the new joiners, and those who are already there is loosening up. And this could be a possible reason why there is so much of attrition right now in the market. Everybody in the market is moving with the resumes in hand, right? So attrition is going to be a big challenge for a lot of companies, and I was reading a lot of reports from a lot of companies in terms of how the attrition percentages have been, and especially in the IT segment. There's a whopping 30 to 40% attrition for many large multinationals, and it's a point of concern. So on one side, we are talking about taking care of your employee. On the other side, here is an employee who may or may not stay with you. And how are you going to create a balance between the two? That's interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Excellent. Thank you for those views, and absolutely. But thank you also for bringing out, this somewhat, age-old problem that we've had, cyclic, of attrition. And you're absolutely right. It's everywhere right now. It is, it is a four-letter word, especially when we have, very high-skill environment and we don't want to lose people. But leaders impact others in a large way, and we certainly don't want to lose our leaders as well. So thank you for that, Ravi. Thank you, Vidhu. So it really paints an interesting picture. There's a lot right now. Of course, as leaders, we may think, wow, how do I deal with all those challenges? There's so much in those challenges. So perhaps as a follow-up question, this time to Sumit and to Vidhu.
Greg, before you go to the follow-up question, may I just
Sure.
add something? Like,
Please.
I personally loved what Ravi brought about, the whole element of employees on a lookout, right? And the job market, no matter what we say, there are opportunities coming up in industry segments, etc. I think in my personal experience, and we are observing this in our own organization, it is a good problem to solve for me. Like, I feel that way is because you're putting pressure back to leaders to start thinking about talent as talent, right? Like, many organizations and industries today still operate in a mindset where they're hoarding talent, and leaders are not really looking at talent as a commodity, right? Like, they're really thinking of it as their asset, and they're going to be with them forever. This whole situation to me is creating a backward pressure for all leaders to say, how do we even have assessments, like early warning signals? When we were in office, I think, and somebody asked this question on our Q&A right now, it relates back to that. When we were in office, it was so easy to just even pick up some of those signs and signals, right? The body language, how are your engagement levels, what time you're coming in, what time you're going out. Like, there were so many of those signals that you would pick as a leader to know how engaged your individual is, or are they on a lookout. in current world wherein we're all like most of us are operating virtually, I think those opportunities and early warning signals are diminishing, and it puts the challenge back for the leaders to think of ways of staying connected with teams and staying connected beyond our regular setups that we have, right? Like, how do you stay connected? And that's a big challenge to solve for today. I hear a lot of our leaders struggling with it within my own organization and industry when we speak to.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for adding that. So the problem is an age-old problem, but the way we will respond to it will be completely different. We can't use the methods we used in the past because things have changed so much. Beautifully articulated. So perhaps, again, as a follow-up connected with that question, maybe to Vidhu, and we'll bring in Sumit this time. What would you say, perhaps we can even start with Sumit, what would you say are the top three then, at a mindset level or leadership mindsets that you sense, we need to then build in leaders to help them, simplify and then deal with these challenges as it begins to occur?
Okay, thanks. And, I think, from our own perspective, what we're realizing more and more while working with organizations is that there are three mindsets which are necessarily organizational mindsets to embed to help the organization become future ready. And then they get translated into the leadership mindsets as well. But I think, first of all, why the mindsets are critical is because, we think that there is too much of attention being given to capabilities or competencies, and capabilities and competencies will keep on changing, keep on evolving as times change. But it's the mindsets, that stand, that carry through. Or in past, perspectives, they were organizational values. Once you've embedded a value well enough, then it will continue. The three mindsets that we are finding more and more critical for future ready leaders is number one, or what we call as the hope mindset. Now, the concept of hope mindset is very simple. Leaders have a much tougher job today than what they had in the future. They will make business plans. They will come out with strategies. Not everything will go in the direction they want. There will be disappointment. There will be stress. And at that point of time, how do they embed hope first within themselves and then within the organization and build that psychological capital in the organization? To deal with that is very, very critical. This is not resilience, but this is a step above resilience. Because resilience is all about bouncing back, but hope is about bouncing forward. So that's number one mindset, which is very, very critical. The second mindset that we believe is the inclusive mindset. And inclusion here is not just about the diversity. There is the diversity side, but inclusion is also about the fact that I now have to include team members in a hybrid remote working. And the inclusion needs to be with my full-time workers, my part-time talent, my gig talent. And if I don't have an inclusive leadership style, if I don't have an inclusive mindset, there will be very high chances of attrition in the team. In fact, most of the research around attrition that is also pointing towards, and I think Ravi brought up the point on attrition very well, is largely it's because of the leadership style. The context has changed, the style has not changed. And the directive style of leadership is, stopping people to be included in the process. And therefore, the inclusive, mindset becomes a second one. The third is there is a lot of business transformation changes happening, as Vidhu earlier spoke about. Digitalization is very, very critical. Customer as a stakeholder has become a lot more critical. And in the middle of all of this, there is still a great opportunity for almost every organization out over there. And therefore, if people do not adopt the growth mindset, to be able to skim through, all of this and say, where are the opportunities, what we can do, how can we grow better? They will find that they'll focus a lot more on short-term execution and not get the organization prepared for future-ready execution. So these are the three mindsets, from my perspective, but will be always good to hear Vidhu's thoughts on the matter.
You very nicely captured, Sumit. I think a lot of what I was thinking is actually already covered. So the only one thing that I would like to add on, and I'm not sure, maybe all of that is connected to what you were talking about in the form of hope. But I think a lot of it is service mindset, right? And we were just chatting with each other before the webinar started. In my view, service leadership has been has been there for years now, but it's making its comeback. It's feeling its relevance right now with all that's happening around in the world, and for individuals, for leaders to stay connected, for leaders to be able to know what the pulse is, being able to respond to that pulse, keeping employee sentiment first ahead of the performance and deliveries and goals, etc. I think a lot of that is taking precedence, I would say. But a lot of, I think you captured it really well, Sumit, I would say. And if I were to elaborate just one thing, to me, the growth mindset takes like, it's a core to everything we're talking about, the growth and learning mindset. When we talked about agility, when we talked about changes, we talked about goalpost shifting. I think everything requires for individuals to be open to that change, to be able to evolve as the business is evolving, as the goals are shifting, be able to adjust, like be able to adapt themselves to those circumstances, open to problem solving, not being very fixated about how things are done. So yeah, it's a lot of that which you've already captured. So I would say thank you. Nice one.
Yeah, wonderful. So thank you. And you know, this simplifies things for us, right? And also helps us to start to think about it in a structured way. It starts with the mindset. And thank you for highlighting those three mindsets. So what we're going to do, team, we're going to just put up a poll that will appear on your screen. And what we'd like to do is to get you to, share which do you feel are the most critical, the ones that you feel leaders in your organization, if you could choose the ones that you feel are the most relevant. And, we will come back and, also comment on that as you're typing in. Thank you. Wow, that's really quick. We can see a lot of you start to comment on that. Thank you so much. As that's coming up, we have some questions, and perhaps we'll just go through some of the questions. Again, thank you everyone for sharing and participating. You've been putting it down. We've been keeping that in mind. We're going to now pause briefly and just look at some of your questions and see that as well. So Vidhu has commented on this, so perhaps I can ask you this question. Kirtana asks, how do you authentically network as a leader in these virtual times? Great question. I know Vidhu's got a comment. Vidhu, would you like to share a little bit with the group? And then if anyone else has a quick view on that as well.
Yeah, no, I actually wrote there for Kirtana. Like, to me, this is one of the big challenges, like I was talking about. And I think in my view, networking in times like these has to be intentional. So what I mean by intentional is, and this is a big question we get from a lot of our employees as well. And my personal trick that I tell everybody is, if this doesn't come naturally to you, map out your stakeholders. Just spend 30 minutes one day, take a paper and a pen, map out all your key stakeholders, people who are important to getting work done and people who are important to your growth. So map out all of those stakeholders and define at what frequency you would like to connect with them. Define whether that connect has to be a formal connect or it has to be an informal connect, right? Not with everybody you'll have a formal connect. Maybe somebody at a very senior level is important to your growth and conversation, and it may not be appropriate for you to schedule a touch base with that individual at a frequency of, say, a month or a quarter, but map them out still and find ways of being able to connect with them. So when you build that stakeholder map and you define, some of those connects could be like touch bases, some of those connects could be larger meetings and team presentations where you decide intentionally, I'm going to speak up over here and, stay back, have a conversation, small talk in the beginning of the meeting, etc. Or even be intentional about planning to say, you know what, this is somebody in my team. I do not directly interact, but they're relevant and important to me. So once in 3 weeks, I'm going to just pick up a phone and speak to them and just talk about how I'm feeling, what's going on, what's happening in their world, right? Very casual conversation. Or a greeting message that goes on Teams or WhatsApp to say, hey, buddy, what's happening in your world? This is what's happening, which you would typically do when you're in office, right? You would go out. For people who smoke, you would want to go for fag breaks and you would catch up. You would have water cooler conversations in cafeteria or coffee conversations or just hello, hi, or showing up in meetings. So a lot of that in world today, if this doesn't come naturally to you, I strongly recommend have a stakeholder map, be intentional about it, calendar it out, try it for 2 or 3 months. Personally, I feel this is a proven method. It has helped a lot of people who struggle with networking, and this is not their natural style and trait. Especially in current times, it really works wonders. Those that would be my recommendation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing. We do those practical suggestions. Ravi, did you want to share something as well?
Yeah, so I have a little contrary view to this because not many people can easily do this. So it comes naturally to a lot of people, but it doesn't come naturally to many. And something that has worked well for me, so I can share that part. If you can be the reason for success for these leaders, then you have them on your side. Yeah. So find out what are the things that can make them successful and where you can contribute, how you can create value for them. Involve in those kind of conversations. And then you will build some amazing networks that will stay lifelong. Somewhere where you can take the credit, pass the credit to them. Right? And you will realize that they will help you to build network with other people whom you find it difficult to build network with. Yeah, they will be the influencers for you. They will speak for you. And this works very well in my case, at least. So if I have to influence somebody in global or regional, this is what I try to do. I try to find out what's the pain point for this person, go and try and influence to have conversation around that rather than influencing the person. Try and have conversation which will add value to the person. Of course, goes without saying, mapping your stakeholders, that's a fantastic way to do it, and having those simple conversations. But sometimes it doesn't come naturally to all of us. That's another challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for helping us see both sides of the coin. I don't know, Sumit, did you also want to come in on this? Keertana, you're getting some real strong, good advice.
Maybe I can just add one very minor additional perspective, and then we can carry on. On the networking side, just to build up on what Ravi just said, I think the mindset towards networking is also very, very critical. A lot of times, specifically Asians and Indians, may look at networking as a manipulative activity, and that blocks me to be able to reach out. And some of us are introverts. Like, for example, I'm an introvert person, so I just could not find a way to network with people for a large part of my career. And then I just realized that networking is not about taking, it's just about giving. And therefore, if I can just adopt a giver's mindset to say, if I'm joining a network, how can I give? If I'm joining this particular session, what can I give? Where can I add value? Then networking is easy. But if the networking is done with the mindset of what can I get, then it is always tough. And the stakeholders are able to see through it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very powerful, Sumit. Thank you.
I
But you
just
also
wanted to
stayed
say,
true to the mindset part. Yeah. Yes.
And I personally resonate with what Sumit said and absolutely agree with what Ravi said as well. I think there was I'm just sharing a personal experience here. There was a time wherein I was somebody who hesitated networking because of the mindset that you talked about, Sumit. I always thought it's about getting something out of that relationship. And I had a mentor who helped me view it very differently. And that was a fundamental shifting point for me. And 100% with you, Ravi, as well. Like it's about really giving the individual what they need versus going out and having a conversation which is meaningless. So actually, really great. Personally experienced.
Yeah. In fact, I just read the comment from Rachel who just mentioned about how it's becoming more and more easy to connect on digital with a lot of leaders in the organization. I think this space is also reducing. I also have a different perspective to this, that I think this gender bias also to a large extent has dropped down because of working in a digital mode, because here now you're only listening to the voice of the person and not just the person. So I have also noticed that the gender bias, which used to exist very strongly in many organizations, that also has come down to a large extent. So that's also helping.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. We'll move on. We have a couple of reflections, and thank you for those reflections, Madhav and Dr. Rachel. I have a quick question here from Sunita. What are the difficult questions you as HR leader are asking the CEO, MD proactively as we prepare ourselves as we move into the future? Thank you, Sunita. Did anyone like to jump in on that?
Rick, I can give my perspective on that. So I feel that the question to the CEO, there are 2-3 things in my mind. One is the CEO itself and the leadership team itself actually clear about what are the changing customer expectations and the changing customer requirements? Because very often there is lack of clarity that starts or can start at the leadership team level. And I think the reason I'm saying this is because another thing that pandemic has taught us, that the most important stakeholder is the customer. The organizations like Siemens or GAPS who have been customer oriented and focused on the customer have gone through the wave and continue to ride through such black swan events for years and ages to come. But organizations which were not customer oriented or not customer obsessive will find it tougher. And therefore, getting the attention on the customer and what are the market issues with the customer, the market, what can we do to help solve that problem? And maybe therefore the associated role of all functions is the most critical element of alignment that I generally feel. And the second, and this may not be relevant for every organization, but what's the purpose of the company itself? Because earlier organizations were focusing a lot more on the vision aspect. I think a lot of that language is now getting replaced with purpose of the company, which is which can align everyone and can create that source of inspiration. So those are just 2 perspectives from my side.
Sure. Well, thanks, Sumit. Vidhu, did you want to come in, and then we'll move ahead? There are some other questions. We'll come back to those in a bit. Quick comment, yeah. Vidhu.
I just wanted to add another one, which is around mindset. A big part of conversations today is about how do we shift mindsets of team members and individuals. And a big question we are struggling with, and we keep asking our leaders is, or CEOs and CXOs for that matter, is how well are we walking the talk? So one is about what Sumit said, having clarity of what is that expectation. And second is walking that behavior, displaying those behaviors, connecting it back to everything that we do, right from processes to structure to how we show up individually. So that's another one that's catching a lot of attention.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So maybe I'll try and give some, I add to this with an exact example of what I just did with my CEO. Yeah. And probably share the questions I really asked just a few days back. And I've tried to help with the story actually what happened. So we took a target for learning hours this year. First time in the history of Siemens. We never took learning hour as a target, but this time we decided we'll do that. And after achieving 200% target on the learning hour, whatever we took, we had a meeting with the entire top management team, the top 15 folks in the company, went and gave a complete presentation of how we performed. And then I had some questions to ask them. And there was a complete slide of only questions. And I'm going to read out some of those questions to you, and maybe that helps. Yeah. So first question is, what do you think in terms of how do we continue the momentum in learning? So I'm a L&D head, and that's why I asked, what is your view about how do we continue the momentum in learning? Not about what's my view, because I cannot decide that. Business has to decide that. Yeah. What should be our right measure for learning? Let them decide. I should not decide that. Yeah. How can we focus on some of the strategic priorities and capability development for you in the organization? And last but not the least, what is the role of the senior leadership in fostering learning culture? I'm just reading out what I exactly asked the top leadership. So why I'm saying that, why I picked up this example is because a lot of times we shy away from asking the right questions and powerful questions, and we make it very generic, thinking that it's not so good, or what could be the response of the CEO. I think we should ask powerful questions because they also want us to ask these kind of questions. Many times those things may not occur naturally to them because they're busy with too many things. They may not go deeper into your agenda. So it's good to go with your agenda and ask questions that matter to your part of the business. So ask tough questions.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ravi, for sharing that recent live experience. So thank you, everyone, for engaging in those comments as well. We'll move on now to, as we continue now to look at the future. We set, I think, the context. We've explored it very nicely. And perhaps to Sumit and Ravi this time, what are some of the paradoxes future-ready leaders will need to manage as a result, and as a result, what capabilities do you think, they would need? We've spoken about the mindset, but what are some of these struggles or paradoxes they would need to deal with?
Okay, so let me try and answer this way. Let's look at the organization perspective. I'm sorry, I just started. Sumit, you wanted to start?
Okay. Go ahead, Ravi.
All right. So if you look at the organization, and I'm going to talk about how at least Siemens is changing, and I'm confident that many organizations are in the same transformation. So if you look at the way we are working in new networks and ecosystems, right? We have accelerated growth, and the digital business is growing rapidly for many organizations. Sustenance of business and increase in technology is common for every organization. There are new business models and, very importantly, new ways of working that we're talking about. Be it interacting with customer, be it managing the competition, be it managing your employees, or be it framing new policies, for example, right? So can one style of leadership fit the bill? Can leadership be static? And can we paint a common leadership picture for all leaders in the organization? Possibly answer is a no. And that is why at Siemens, we have taken a call that we will not define what are the leadership competencies, and we will have dynamic leadership competencies. So our new leadership narrative talks about that what are your company priorities? Understand that. How does that play for you in your own silo? And how would you demonstrate leadership in your area? Understand that. So what leadership skills I need may be different from you. Maybe that I need to demonstrate servant leadership. Maybe you need to be more influential. Maybe somebody needs to adapt something different, right? So all that is very important. Another thing that I like to add here is, while I agree with the three mindset that we spoke about, I like to add a little bit from a company transformation perspective. So human behavior, yes, completely agree. But where the businesses are transforming, we are becoming more digital. And companies like Amazon or Uber, etc., they are moving towards, they are actually platform-based companies. And companies like Siemens are moving towards getting there. So what does it mean for a leader to move from a conventional brick-and-mortar company to a platform-based organization? What are the new skill sets required? And how do I manage my people? Do I understand platform? And remember, platform business is different from digital business, right? So the competencies that you would need in a digital economy or digital organization versus what you would need in a platform-based business would be very different. So in platform-based business, you need to understand how do you create network effects? How do you become orchestrator of the platform ecosystem? Do our leaders have those competencies or not? So on one side, it is mindset. On the other side, it is their ability to think in these directions, align themselves to what the organization's asks are. And I think this is where many organizations are heading to, which is something very difficult. I mean, when you go outside in the market and search for people with this kind of a mindset, it's difficult to find. And those who are available, they are expensive. Yeah, so that's the challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that perspective, and also what's happening, and you know how leadership is also a bit fluid, as you pointed out. Sumit?
Sure. So I think I'll just maybe build up on some of the points that Ravi said and add some additional color to it. So if I just go back to the mindset, I think when we look at the growth mindset, there are 2-3 capabilities which are very critical. There are several others, and I agree that it's also got a lot to do with every organization, every role. But at a meta level, when we look at the key themes, the digital innovation as a capability is now an organizational capability. Everyone needs to think digitally. And I think what people are realizing more and more very clearly is, number one, what is digital itself, right? Problem is that most organizations have not even defined what is digital, and there is an unnecessary confusion around it. A very simple way of looking at digital is reimagining a customer process and solving that by leveraging digital technologies. Effectively, digital innovators ask themselves one question again and again: is there a better way of doing this by leveraging technology? So the focus is always on the customer. Technology comes much later, at the end. But this change is a major change for organizations and for individual leaders who follow very traditional ways of problem solving. There are more modern ways of problem solving and processes which are becoming very, very critical. So the digitalization capabilities are not complex. The digital technologies is complex, but the digital mindset capabilities are not complex, but it requires major leadership style changes for organizations to adopt. On the inclusion side, I think the one big capability is psychological safety. That's the end. If you were to ask me what is that one thing within inclusive leadership, I would say it's psychological safety. And it's not got to do with the intent of leaders or the leadership to be able to build it. It's a difficult capability to display when you're working and in a remote and hybrid working environment, because you don't have chance to build that one-to-one rapport and relationships. But that's the big block. And the problem is that it's the lack of psychological safety which also impacts the growth orientation of the digital innovation as a cluster. And I think the third are more practices for organization. I think Vidhu very nicely in the earlier part of the conversation spoke about the concept of almost established organizations adopting a startup kind of a culture. And I think one practice that I feel that organizations have to adopt, which will then need to reflect back on the leadership capabilities, is the concept of MVP, or what we in design thinking call it as minimum viable product. Established organizations are too used to drive for perfection, which slows them down. Startups focus on MVPs, the beta versions, and they start. That's a major shift, and it has implications on several types of capabilities, which will be required. So just those additional perspectives, Craig.
Great, wonderful. Thank you.
I know you're sensitive about time, but I just wanted to add a couple of elements. I think I fully agree with everything that Ravi and Sumit captured there. Additionally, I wanted to bring in 2 perspectives over here. And I think both are coming from real examples at CAP, I would say. Your question was more around what are some of the leadership paradoxes, right? Like 2 additional ones that I think are very critical is speaking with candor, right? There's a place where we're talking about empathy, love, care, and then we're talking about speaking with candor. I think I also saw, I guess it was Sunita asking that question, that how do you manage that paradox, right? And as an organization, we are really working on this concept of radical candor, right? So I'm a big fan of that book and that framework, and I wanted to kind of call that out. It's about caring personally and challenging directly. So that paradox, and that's a skill that leaders need to learn today, right? How do you care for people deeply and personally? And how do you have that comfort of challenging directly, to Ravi's point, asking those difficult questions, feeling comfortable to disagree in a room full of individuals, etc. So that's one leadership paradox I wanted to talk about, right? The other one we are practicing and we are trying to create that culture and mindset shift is around trying fast, think fast, and learning. So try fast, learn fast, thinking big, right? That's also one of our core values we're trying to practice. Now, that goes back to what you were saying, Sumit, right? Like almost all organizations, especially the traditional organizations, which includes us as Gap, right? We were brick and mortar setup. So moving from a perfection product out to say, I want this, like I'm wearing this Gap t-shirt. In a typical scenario, this t-shirt would actually be taking a quarter to manufacture, one full quarter. So for a season or a collection that would get launched in spring, we would start working for it in summer. So 3 full months versus there are organizations today, our competitors in fast fashion, etc., for turning around this product in few days or few hours, I would say as well, right? So that's the shift that industry is seeing. And it's not just apparel, across technology organizations, apparel, supply chain, consumer products, every organization is struggling with those changes. At that point in time, having the confidence to deal with that uncertainty of shifting goalposts and launching the minimal viable product as a leader is very important. But at the same time, what's also important is accepting and having the humility to say, I failed, or this is the mistake I made, and here's what I need to learn from it, right? Now, these two to me are extremely important, very, very critical, something we are grappling with as an organization, and we're also trying to walk on that path. Most organizations are. I just wanted to add that.
Sure, no, wonderful. Excellent. And interesting when we think of some of those paradoxes as we move forward. So we've explored this quite a bit, and perhaps just one last question, and this is just to Vidhu and Ravi. If you'd like to share with us, perhaps what are organizations doing, or if you'd like to more specifically share what your organization is doing to equip leaders for the future.
Okay, maybe I'll start.
Sure, Ravi, please.
Multiple things, and be it global initiatives, be it local initiatives, but I'll talk about one of the initiatives. Maybe that makes more sense so that I can go a little deeper in that. So one of the initiatives that we are driving across the organization is a program to help leaders develop capabilities to manage workforce of tomorrow. So build future leaders to create value and move from good to great, and not only great, but go beyond great. And the approach that we are adapting here is how can we create a program which is inclusive in nature, which is not for people managers, but for the entire team. So typically a leadership program, you'll have only the leaders as the participants of the program. Here you have all the direct reports of the leader also participating in the program. And we are doing this intervention for almost 1,400 people in the company. And therefore we are impacting almost 8,000 or 9,000 people in the company within 1 year, just 1 year. 6 months journey. The focus is on how do you develop growth mindset. Now growth mindset, all of us, if I ask you, would you consider success of others as a threat to you or a learning opportunity? More often than not, you will say learning opportunity. And when I say how do others think, you will say they think that it is a threat, right? But when I ask the same question to somebody else, they will answer the reverse for me also, right? So they think that I have a fixed mindset. I think they have a fixed mindset. But what do I have? I have a growth mindset, right? So it's not about thinking. It's about how do you act, how do you behave in front of people, and the language that you speak, right? So we are helping people, managers in the organization, and thereby the entire teams develop that language of growth mindset, develop those actions, those behaviors that they demonstrate, which are directed towards growth mindset. And growth mindset is not something that you come or born with. You need to also learn, right? Remember, your default state is always a fixed mindset. That's how our brain works. So that's one part of the program. Second part of the program is we are training our people managers to have meaningful conversation, coaching-oriented conversation. And the big reason is we have gone away with the rating system. We no longer have those goal-setting processes, looking at past performances. We're talking about what mistakes you did, what did you learn from that, and what you can do in the future. And last but not the least, focusing on how you can utilize strengths of your employees to achieve peak performance. Uh, Another thing that Sumit brought to the picture, which is the bedrock of the program, is psychological safety. So how do you to build psychological safety? By ensuring that you do things that will increase trust in the organization. So it is said that people join the company because they want to learn and grow. That's the topmost reason. Career is the second, salary is the third. All of us have heard about it. And we also heard people leave the company because of their managers, right? But it is those managers they leave that don't focus on learn and growth, right? So we are helping people, managers, develop the skills of having meaningful conversation around learn and grow, and hoping that in this process we develop trust-based leadership in the organization. So that's what we are trying to do at this moment. It's a massive task. Let's see where we land up.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that insight, Ravi. Very comprehensive, beautiful. Vidhu, would you like to also share, please?
I wanted to first say that, Ravi, thank you, because a lot of what you said is something that we're also trying as an organization. So a lot of our work anchors and centers around the concepts of psychological safety, around growth mindset, about, including the larger workforce in that journey. If I could just add one or two areas where we are probably dialing up, I would say we are moving away from the concept of skill building, and we're talking more about mindset shifts. So, and any mindset shift that you talk about, it would not happen through a monologue of us getting in a classroom and training people. It's a journey and it's an experience that individuals have to go through. Most of our work today is centered around in inviting employees to come together and have conversations as intact teams, right? So we are playing, as a learning organization, we are playing a role of facilitator in that journey, where we have put together, we've clarified what are the leadership expectations for all individuals and leaders in GAP. We're clarifying that, and then we're asking individuals to, in their intact teams, have conversations and dialogues around, translate the meaning, translate what that means for us. And that particular team, what are they going to do differently? So it's a more action-oriented learning, putting them in the space of ownership and empowering them to take actions that will help them shift that mindset, and asking them to come back and share with the leadership around what barriers would they want to be removed from leadership for them to be able to get to that mindset shift, right? So it's a deeper mindset shift journey we are on. And for us as an organization, with all that's happening, one of the biggest levers for us would be shifting those mindsets. So that's one piece of work that I wanted to highlight that's ongoing at the moment. We have just begun that journey. The conversations are happening, employees are connecting with each other, having the dialogue. We are very soon meeting again where they'll be presenting back to say, here are the actions we've already taken, and this is what this mindset and behavior means to us, and this is how we're going to work towards it. And here is the support we need from the organization, or these are the barriers we need to be removed. And together we're holding each one of us accountable in that journey. The other piece that I wanted to add is around learning itself, right? And this wouldn't be new for a lot of us in this space and industry. We've been talking about it for a while now. We've been delivering as well. I think we've moved away from day-long classroom session trainings, etc., to learning journeys. And we've been partnering with organizations of the likes of InspireOne to help us curate those learning journeys. And the whole idea of having the learning journey, it could be 6 months, 1 year learning journey, is to say, there's a lot of follow through, there's pre-work associated, there is self-paced learning through LinkedIn, through other channels of TEDs, etc. There are conversations that are held outside of the session. There are virtual learning sessions where instructor-led sessions happening. We're trying to experiment with peer-based learning as well. So a lot of focus on reskilling is coming from peer-inspired learning. So leveraging Teams channels and other chat groups where like level individuals come together and share their own best practices or contribute to the discussions, etc. That's another way that we're experimenting. We're looking at having peer-based learning circles or peer-led learning circles. So instead of having a trainer come in and talk, having an in-house, team member and an expert speak on topics, educate each other, etc. So yeah, while there's whole host of work on learning, making it experiential, blended learning journeys, simulations and academies, etc., which is in place, but a big highlight for us right now is mindset shift through all employee conversations and action planning.
Wonderful. And what an excellent way to close out on this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Some great insights. We got, thank you, Vidhu, Sumit, Ravi, for spending time, for sharing the insights of what these global organizations are doing. Sumit, from your experience of working across various senior groups of people, it was really fascinating to look at it. It's definitely something we all want to invest our time in as we think about ourselves as leaders, but also think about our organization as leaders. And I think the mindset is coming out very, very strongly as some key areas to start. And some beautiful insights, it being fluid, to think about growth came out very, very strongly. So thank you so much for all those insights. Hopefully, everyone who joined, no doubt you picked up a lot from these leaders with us. We will, of course, continue to engage with you. Those of you for whom we've not yet been able to answer your questions, I think we've tried, but we will get back to you post the session to make sure your questions are answered. We know that we live a life that goes from meeting to meeting. So I'm sure you're already ready to jump into your next. Well, thank you so much once again. I really enjoyed having you with us. The panelists, wonderful panel. Those in the audience, thank you so much. All the best, everyone. Stay safe and stay tuned for some further updates after this session.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the conversation.
Thanks, Ravi. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Ravi. Thanks,
Thanks.
Sumit.
Take care. Take care. Bye-bye.